Hi everyone, and thanks for tuning back in. In this episode, we will be making this faux marble epoxy resin countertop, and it is part of a larger build of a built-in bar that I am adding to my dining room, and there will be videos including that design as well. Thanks for coming. For this project, I purchased an epoxy resin kit online, and this particular kit is called the Carrara Marble. The first item that we'll use is called the Stone Coat Epoxy Undercoat, a couple of foam rollers, some brushes. I didn't actually end up using these, but some projects will call for them. Mixing sticks, a plastic drop cloth. This also came with a kit. It's the white paint and these two packets. I purchased the buckets separately. This is the white metallic dust and this is the black. Epoxy resin can be applied to various materials. I am applying it to this custom fit MDF. It's just 3/4 inch MDF, as you can see here. And I applied an additional strip at the bottom to give it the thickness look of natural stone. To prep the surface, I sanded it and I started with 80 grit, and that's basically for the edge mostly because of the glue when I sandwiched both of those pieces together for the thickness. And then I did a light sand over that using, I believe it's 120 here with an Orbital Sander. And for the purpose of this video, I had already sanded it prior to this clip. And before applying the epoxy undercoat, you just want to wipe down the surface and get rid of any dust. You might have to vacuum it, but in this case I'm just using a lint-free cloth. This is the epoxy undercoat that came with the kit that I had purchased. And here I am just applying the very first coat. Here I'm scuffing up the surface to get it ready for its second coat of epoxy undercoat. I will mention that the epoxy undercoat that came with the kit is a one-time use. It is not for multiple use, so you have to ensure that you have enough time for your project in the same day, depending on how many coats you want to apply. I'm just doing 2 coats, so the drying time in between coats was only an hour. So after the hour, I'm here just scuffing up and wiping down the surface to get it ready for its second coat of epoxy undercoat. Next, I am mixing and creating the color variations for the countertop, and I'm starting with part B that came with a kit. I know it seems a little unnatural because you want to start with part A, but there's actually a reason for it. Part B is a smoother consistency, so that pours out really quick and really nice. And part A, which I'm opening here, is a much thicker solution, so it takes a while for it to pour out. Once part B and part A are added to the bucket, I'm now going to use this paddle on a drill to mix it. And mix it for about 2 minutes. The part A and part B should be a 1-to-1 ratio, and that's the same for any size kit that you may purchase. I purchased the small kit, which gives me a total of 2 quarts. So it was 1 quart of part B and 1 quart of part A. A little pro tip here, be sure to hold your bucket, otherwise you'll end up with a very messy situation like I did. Now that I lost about 8 ounces after that spill disaster, I'm now creating the colors that will make it look like real marble. I split the 2 quart mixture in half. So in the larger bucket here, I have 1 quart of the epoxy mixture, and I just added the white dye to it. Now a little bit of dye goes a long way. I only poured a nominal amount in here, and it is already pretty white. I'm just adding a little bit more, and you can play with the colors however you prefer. And here is the base, the white that we're starting off with, and it is going to be the larger of the product colors that I use because I want mostly white on my project. With the other quart of mixture, what I did is I split it between these 2 cups, leaving only maybe about 4 ounces in the further cup for the black. I'm not going to need that much because it's just going to be used to create the veins, but in the bucket that I'm mixing now, the larger amount of the remaining quart I am using for the white dust. This white metallic dusting actually is a little bit opaque, and it's a little bit more yellow than the white that we had previously mixed. At first I wasn't so sure about it and if it was going to ruin the project, but it actually really makes it look like stone. I'm just ensuring that I'm mixing the powder thoroughly so I don't end up just dusting on the counter. Also, be sure to use a mask when you're doing this. The dust is very fine and it's not a good idea to be inhaling that. And another tip is be sure to use a brand new stick for each of the mixings that you're doing, because the worst thing is to get the color to be off if you use a stick from a previous mixing. For instance, in this case, if I had used the white stick that I had used in the mix I did before this would have turned this a different color. Once you're sure that your surface is clean of any debris, it is time to start pouring your epoxy. I started with the white, the natural white, and again, this is going to be the product I use mostly on the counter because I want it mostly white. You can play with the variations and it all depends on your preference. Because I had lost some of the epoxy mixture in my snafu of the paddle, I'm making sure to scrape all of the sides so I get the most product I can. Since I only bought the smaller kit, I want to definitely ensure that I'm using all of the mixture as possible. Once all of the white is poured, now I can go ahead with my next color. And in this case, it's going to be the opaque dusting white mixture. And this will be a little bit less than the previous pour. And I'm just going along kind of in the same pattern, but not really, just filling in the gaps. And this will create a really natural looking piece of stone because natural stone is not perfect. So I'm just putting it in all of the open areas and just trying to get good coverage all over. And now for the part that scares most people, I'm actually just going in with my hands and blending these two colors together. Now it's not going to be a perfect blend, I'm just sort of swirling the product, making sure to get it in the edges here, as close to the taped off edge as possible. I should mention that one side, on the left side, you can see that there is no tape. That's going to be the edge of the counter, the only edge that's going to be visible. The rest of the counter, the part that's taped off, is going to be in an enclosed space, so you will not need to create an edge. And that's why it looks the way that it does. So I'm just ensuring that I'm getting the product up over this edge, making sure that I'm pushing it toward the edge and filling in close to the tape so there's no parts of the counter that's empty. As the project goes along, you'll start to see it self-level, which is exactly what you want. Here's what the counter looks about 20 minutes after I had just finished the second pour. The next and final color that I'm applying to create my look is going to be the black resin, and that is going to be used for the veins. That is the first line that I am creating, and you can barely see it right now. And I'm adding about 2 more lines on the countertop because again, I just wanted it mostly white with a little bit of vein. So you'll see that when I apply the second vein, it'll be more noticeable. For the black epoxy, if you can remember earlier in my video, I had set aside like maybe 6 ounces of the second half of the 2-quart resin to make the black dusting. So I made a very small amount, and I'm just using a paint stick to apply it right out of the bucket. I did choose to go over a second time on the second line here just to make it thicker. And again, you know, you can go in any pattern that you want. There really is no mistakes because it's natural stone, or it's supposed to look like natural stone. For the next part, I'm going to blend the lines now with my hands. Some people use the brush stroke method where they just kind of dab the veins. I'm just using my hands. There is again no wrong way to do this. Also, you can leave the lines the way that I applied them originally. But I like more of a blended look so that it looks more like a smoke line and not such a defined line. But again, it's your personal preference. Originally I was only going to do 2 lines, but I actually thought that a third line would make it look more uniform. So I'm going to apply a third line to this bottom right corner. Now for the project that I'm actually doing, the right corner here is going to have a wine rack on top, like a built-in wine rack. So you're not going to see a lot of the counter, but I figured you'll still see some of it kind of poking out of the edges, so I just wanted it to look as natural as possible. When I first blended, I was pretty nervous and I was thinking, oh, I hope I didn't mess this up. But actually, as the epoxy settles, it swirls things around and it makes it more natural looking. And also, I apply heat to this, so it'll move around the colors a little bit as well. And here I am just torching the surface. And what this does is that it seals the epoxy. It also gets rid of any of the bubbles that come to the surface. You'll notice a lot of bubbles when you're doing this, and you definitely want to get rid of those. I don't keep it in one space for too long. It all depends on what you want to do. If you do want to move around the colors, leaving it on longer will actually start moving those swirls around. Some areas I did it, like right here, I started to kind of move around the colors a little bit, but mainly I did this part was to get out any of the bubbles. And here's what the counter looks like just after I had finished applying the heat to it. So this is going to run off of that finished edge where the tape isn't overnight. You can see right here, it's kind of dripping over, and that's exactly what you want it to do. And here is the finished product installed in our built-in bar. I absolutely love how this project came out, and it is exactly what I wanted for the space. Thanks for tuning in.